Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. And can we have a quick show of hands first? How many of you have some sort of an early deployment of Gen AI within your organizations? That's not a very sizable number. So, but yeah, I mean, considering the strength of the room right now, it's a good number, reasonable number. So we're trying to understand here what exactly is the promise of Gen AI. What are some of the potential hurdles? Because ever since its launch in November 2022, it quickly moved front and center into the interest of consumers, and the enterprises also started to take notice. Initially, it became something of an ubermensch, an exotic curiosity, but in the consumer space, it quickly grabbed the interest, and the IT leaders, digital leaders also started to take notice of some of its potential in terms of improving productivity, saving time, and bringing in efficiency. The McKinsey report says that Gen AI could add almost 2.6 to 4.4 trillion dollars in terms of economic impact through improved productivity, saving of time, and bringing in people into other value-added activities to improve the efficiency of organizations. Now, the promise, potential, and prowess is huge, but there are some teething troubles, some issues around bias, around the implementation cost, training of data, also the skill set. So we'll try and understand with these gentlemen here, what are some of the initial challenges that they see, how organizations can obviate some of these challenges and risks that are associated with Gen AI, and what are they doing within their organizations to make sure that they get the equation right. So I'd like to start off with you, Shakti sir. You're in the online travel agency space, a leading player at that. You have been working with some early use cases in the field of Gen AI, some early success also that you've seen. How are you dealing with it? What are some of the use cases that you've explored in terms of better customer service, customer support? You're also, leveraging the retrieval augmented Gen AI. How are you dealing with some of the near-term problems with Gen AI in terms of the implementation cost and the the shortage of existing skills within your organization, the skill set challenge?
Sure, Sneha. That's a very relevant question, and thanks to ETCIO for having me here. So first, let me respond by mentioning 3 or 4 use cases that we have deployed at Yatra. See, Yatra is number 1, I think, in India in corporate travel. A lot of our customers want us to analyze their expenses, like the travel expenses. So we built an expense management solution where the receipts are automatically analyzed. The traditional approach is to use OCR, right? So instead of OCR, what we use the vision capabilities of Gen AI, and we ask Gen AI to analyze the receipts and also categorize whether it's a meal receipt or a travel receipt, and then it gets the line items from it. And most of the time, it's quite accurate. One interesting thing is a lot of customers will not pay for alcohol if alcohol was consumed during the meal. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of brands of alcohol in the world, right? For example, there's a brand called a Bucket of Gods, it's a beer. There's another brand called Dark Donkey. Who in the world would think, that these are alcohol brands? But the content power, the knowledge, the amount of data that LLM has been trained for actually helps us tell that this particular line item in this receipt is alcohol. So it will tell us that. So that is kind of a unique use case. A lot of our customers who are senior partners make multiple bookings, for the same day, not knowing when the meeting would end. So we have built a voice bot. It's a cancellation bot. They can just say, show my bookings for today, and then cancel the booking with PNR 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here we have combined LLM's capability to invoke AI, so now you can combine software engineering with artificial intelligence and build products. That is another thing. The third example is about email bots that we have created. A lot of our customers will send an email saying that, I want to go from here to there. Give me the options, there will be a person who will be reading the email, firing APIs, getting the results. Instead, we have built a software solution and where we understand the intent of that email, And based on that intent, we identify the key things from that email and then run our APIs and then generate an email. The experience is supreme here, and the cost has also been cut down. There was a presentation earlier by Kiowas where they said that, using voice, they can generate charts and analyze data. So we have also implemented that using RAG solution. And then you can have LLMs which will generate the SQL statements for you. They will generate Cypher query, depending on the database you have. And then you can extract the information and then present in a meaningful manner. These are the use cases. Now,
I
how to
believe
do
you've
that?
also taken the industry-first approach of activating third-party APIs through LLMs, right?
Yes, at least in the travel industry, I have not seen, a solution where Gen AI is, especially OpenAI, GPT models, which can actually fire an API. So like you create function and you create agents and you invoke an agent based on certain conditions when they have been met, right? So like you have to write the prompt accordingly. There are, all this requires a lot of prompt engineering, and like you can do that, yes. So the main challenges are, there's no course out there which will train people, in prompt engineering, Gen AI. So what you do is, you can watch videos, you can read articles, and actually I often tease my team saying that, you're doing this work, so like you're earning while learning, right? All this is coming free to you. You are enhancing your skills while you're getting paid for it. So actually, sit down with them. I roll up my sleeves. I write the prompt. They write the prompt. We try a lot of things. Experimentation. Is the key here. As far as the cost is concerned, when you're doing the development, the cost is not heavy because if you're using the API approach, what is it like for 5 million tokens? It's like $1.50, something like that, and each token is each token is 4-character word. Right, so you can do the development easily, and for the solutions I mentioned, we hardly spend like $50 to $100. You won't believe it. It's $50 to $100. If you use tools like Gemini, which is not an open source, they will give you 60 hits free per minute, right? So you get a lot of free stuff out there. You can do the development, but once you take it to production, and the amount of hits you get, for example, the number of emails, right? We have deployed it for 2 customers, and we are already spending like around $10 per day for the amount of emails we get, right? And we have more than 1,000 customers. So like this cost is going to balloon up. So how do you handle this? So we used a lot of software engineering principles. We don't tell Gen AI to understand the intent of each email. We say that if the email has these keywords in the subject line, in the body, the intent is not flight query, right? So we continuously improvise on that, and then only limited emails which have no HTML content, we actually, and then we send that to the LLM model to get the intent. See, LLMs, the cost is only in the number of tokens. It is not how much CPU you're using, nothing like that. It's the number of tokens that you're passing it to it. So if you can control the number of tokens, you can control the cost. The other thing is, instead of tuning your own models, you can get a private instance model, you can take Mistral, you can take Llama and all these, and then train them with your own data. For that, you need GPU cost. So instead of doing that, use the RAG approach. You have an LLM model, you have a data set, and I try to marry the two at the same time. These are a few ways of cutting down the costs.
Now, Raj, when we talk about training Gen AI models, it requires very high computational GPUs and substantial memory. All of this could be very expensive for mid-sized companies. So how do you think they can deal with the challenge of the high amount of cost, training, time, effort that is involved in training these models?
Certainly. So when you're looking at building any Gen AI models, of course, there are challenges. They're costly because you need high GPU power. You need a skilled team as well because you need people who have built these. The third thing is that when you start building any Gen AI models, it could take a couple of weeks, couple of months to perfect them. Certainly there are challenges for organization. It could be small, it could be big, but all the organizations are experiencing that. Now there's certainly certain practices which you could use through which you could build your Gen AI models, which are cost effective. One of them could be that you could use pre-trained models. So what are those models? These are those models which are already trained by the providers. You do not need to train them from scratch. That helps you to ensure that you safeguard. One is, of course, your cost. The second is that you don't need to put a lot of efforts. You don't need a very skilled team in order to do this. Now, I'm not endorsing any products, but of course you can use Google, you could use Microsoft, OpenAI. They're offering these solutions, and this can ensure that you don't end up spending a lot of money and time as well. That's one. The second could be that you could also use API services. So there are certainly solutions available where instead of putting money, setting up your services yourself, you can use API services, which can ensure again you can save, you can save time, you can save efforts, you can save money as well. The third could be that you could use cost-effective models where you're hosting your Gen AI platforms on on something like, let's say, Microsoft or AWS as well, where it ensures that you're not spending too much money in your capex. So that could be another thing which you could do. The fourth is you could use Gen AI as a service, which ensures that you are actually outsourcing your needs to somebody else who's more skilled, who has spent time on this, and who could build models for you within the time frame you're looking for and being cost effective as well. So these are some of the things which can be done by anybody to ensure that you're not spending too much of money, too much of efforts, and not spending too much of time as well while you're building your Gen AI models.
Absolutely. Now, Gaurav, infrastructure and data complexity are two of the biggest challenges when it comes to for organizations when it comes to leading Gen AI LLM models into production. So, how can organizations solve for that challenge?
See, what Raj said, perfectly makes sense that when there are so many existing models, pre-trained models available in the market, why do you need to build? So there are certain use cases where you need to build your own model from scratch, but at the same time, there are enough and more models available in the market which are pre-trained. If you look at these large companies, they have invested billions of dollars in building these models, in pre-training them on a sophisticated set of data sets. So I feel that first of all, organizations need to clearly identify what kind of use cases they want to solve. And once those use cases are identified, I think the first priority should be, can these use cases be solved using the existing models? And right now in the industry, there are so many models. The important question becomes that how do you find the right model for the use cases that you have? So, there are platforms like Hugging Face, where if you go and see, right now there are millions of, models of all sizes, millions of data sets from which you can choose. So based on your specific use cases, they have, categorized those models. You can go choose a particular model. There's a community where you can, discuss that, is this the right model, that I need to, choose. And there are multiple parameters that helps you, choose the right model from. So there you can do your market research to see what are the benchmark scores of these models, what is the language support that these models have, whether you need the data, real time or batch processing. So basis that, what is going to be your infra cost, what is going to be your support cost. So all these parameters will help you identify the right model that you want to use. And then on top of that model, then you can, customize that model. You can, custom train that model using your own data. And for that also, right now, there are a lot of, managed services. So I'll take an example of, let's say, Amazon Bedrock. So this is a fully managed service, let's say, where you can explore the pre-trained models. On top of it, you can, put your own data, train them for the specific use cases, and you need not to worry too much about, having a infra team, having a DevOps team, scalability. So the question about, how do companies overcome these challenges is by leveraging the tools that are currently available in the market. So if you want to look for more sophisticated tools, there are tools like Vertex AI. A lot of no-code or low-code tools are available in the market where a semi-technical or a techno-functional person can also leverage these tools to solve their use cases.
Right, absolutely. Now, I'd like to take that thread to you, Dr. Pavankumar. When you have these enterprise training programs, when you're advising the senior managerial positions, how do you help them navigate the dichotomy between the open LLMs and the paid LLMs? How do you advise them where to use what, when to use what?
That's a good question. So I think firstly, I need to speak to him a lot because over the last 1 year, I was just sharing with Molly sir as well, over the last 8 months, enterprise attention in Gen AI has like skyrocketed. So if I synthesize my own experience of training several enterprises over the last 8 months, this is one important question that always comes up during a training. There is a paid LLM which is very variable cost. There is a open LLM which is fixed cost. How do I choose between both? I think the correct way to look at it is on two axes. From an enterprise use case, it's cost versus value, but also the fine point here is that your data is going to a paid model. If that is a concern for you, then the decision is made. No cost, even if it's the cheapest model. No enterprise is going to, if you're a bank, if you're an insurance company, the decision is made right then and there. If data going outside your organizational boundaries is not a concern, that's when this whole discussion comes in. The nuance here is that it is true, like Shakti sir was saying, that the usage of, say, GPT-4o Turbo or GPT-4o Mini is about $0.0015 for 1 million tokens. So that's variable cost. If you take, say, Llama 3.1, the model itself is about 16 GB just to sit on RAM, right? Which means, and if you're deploying on your own, you'll need one server and a backup. So that's about 200 rupees per hour, whether you do one request or you do 0 requests, right? So, 200 rupees per hour. So if I fire 1,000 predictions to OpenAI, I can count the cost. If I fire the same 1,000 predictions to self-hosted model, then that is 200 rupees per hour you're paying. So so in class I was forced to do this math. So it works out that when you're at a lower scale, paid models are actually cost effective because you're variabilizing your entire cost of hardware, of network in out, plus the team, like Gaurav said, DevOps, like you need a team who needs to manage it and all of that. But when you hit a certain scale, this is true broadly in my experience of doing deep learning for a decade, is when it makes sense to keep things in-house, go invest fixed costs. Yes, there's an upfront investment, you will have to own company servers, but it'll pay off because you're doing that predictions at that scale and it comes down. So at a lower scale, roughly, I think paid models are about 15% cheaper than open models, though it looks like they are free. They are not because you have to host them and there is network in and out. So yeah, so two tiers of answers. If your data is a concern for you, then don't even think about it. It's only open models. If data is not a concern for you and compliance is okay, then this question comes. And there as well, I always ask, like Gaurav said, what is your use case? How many predictions are you making? If it's lower, don't think about it. Go towards paid models. They'll get you to the POC faster. They'll get you to deployment faster. Try it out. Think of the open models as a way to figure out or get bargains from the paid models. When you compare both, you can see what an open model does and do what a paid model does. And a vendor comes to you and you can say, I know Llama does this. Can your model do this better or at least on par? So you can use that as a bargaining chip.
Right. That's a good segue into my next question to Molly sir. Molly sir, you deal with a lot of customer data. How are you preparing for a Gen AI driven future at PayPal, and how are you navigating some of the challenges? What are some of the top challenges you're facing? And like Dr. Pavan was talking about, how are you figuring out where to use what?
Great question. Great to be here. I don't think the somewhat has actually disappeared now. I think the way this panel is answered, I think somewhat has gone out of the window. I think, I want to take a step back. I think, AI has become truly democratized with Gen AI coming in, right? And so let's imagine 3 pillars. So you have your traditional predictive AI, then you have your generative AI, then you have today more a multimodal generative AI. And the reason this classification is important is that it helps you think about the variety of use cases that we all in enterprises can go and tackle. Now, when you go from there to the next level and think about use cases, let's list out a few use cases, broad categories, right? So if you think about, say, personalization, there were a few conversations today on personalization. So think about customer servicing, personalization, great use case. Definitely a mix of both predictive and generative AI, right? So just because we're talking about generative AI, we don't have a generative AI hammer on our hands. So we have to be thoughtful from an enterprise perspective in terms of what is the problem, the use cases that the panelists referred to. So clearly customer service and personalization, significant opportunity on both sides. Chatbots and things like that a lot of people have spoken about, classic use case for generative AI. Now that's one. Now, if you go back to the premise, Sneha mentioned statistics around, say, $4 trillion, McKinsey study. Now, if you go deeper into the study, it actually says that 75% of the cost actually comes from efficiency. She mentioned the word efficiency, and that efficiency comes from things like software engineering. So, knowledge management, think about your code development, those things are strong use cases. Now, those are strong use cases because Gen AI, very human-like text generation, right? So, standard use case around, those pieces. Then you get into a lot more different use cases. Like how do you think about, say, if there is a compliance-related use case, how do you think about, say, document scanning, crawling the web and figuring out, are they selling things that they should not be selling? These are all a lot more interesting use cases, a lot more sophisticated use cases where a lot of Gen AI power, as the Yatra use case came in terms of expense management, very similar in terms of thought process, right? So one has to think about these types of use cases and then go after solutions. Now, at PayPal, see, the way we should think about it, and we think about it a lot, is we think about it, let's say you have two axes, okay? Your vertical axis is, say, on the top, you have what is fully automated, and on the bottom, you have, say, co-pilot, right? So it's like there's a human touch. And then you have your horizontal axis, which is external customer facing, and then your internal customer facing. So now you have this picture in your mind, right? The more you go towards the right top quadrant, it's high risk, high reward, but also high risk. So you have to be very thoughtful about putting a solution out there, right? And so that's like a customer service chatbot that's out there that your customers can come and use, right? And so this quadrant helps, helps us, and I'm guessing other organizations as well, visualize which are the easier ones to do. So if you go to the left quadrant, bottom quadrant, then it's like internal co-pilot, like code development, like a co-pilot for code development, very internal focus. There's always a human involved, very easy, like very quick, and you can get something out there, right? And so, and you see, based on data, other people have shared, McKinsey research, other things, you see that there's a lot of standardized, very quick efficiency that you can get. 25, 30%, I mean, numbers varies, but 25, 30% seems to be a lot of people mentioning in this range. And so this quadrant helps us tackle a lot of the enterprise use cases. Now, being very specific, Sneha, to answer your question finally, right? So about the potential use case, see, what we've done is we have a PayPal assistant that's live in the US. It's a voice assistant for our customers. That's live in the US today. We also have exploring a few other use cases, right? One is, of course, there's a code assistant, co-pilot that's already live. Our developers use it a lot. 7,000, 8,000 developers within the company use it a lot. Now, a few other use cases. Compliance seems to be a very strong, high potential use case, tough problem to crack, right? Because you have to parse, say, let's assume that, you have a policy which prohibits selling, certain items. And then the seller actually, when they come to you and they list with you saying that, hey, I'm going to become a PayPal customer, and then you onboard me. And then at that time, let's say they sell 10 items. So you scan through it and then say, okay, these 10 are all fine. But you don't scan them every day, right? I mean, you manually cannot do it. And so the person can actually add items that are prohibited into that list. So Gen AI, strong use case in terms of crawling this, parsing this, like the example that, in terms of, the brands that are known. So this database is very powerful for you to figure out what is prohibited and not prohibited, right? So that's the third type of use case. Now, fourth type of use case is heavily on personalization, right? So how do you think about understanding what customers want based on their past interactions, their clicks, and making offers to them? Very, very strong use case. And there are plenty of other use cases out there as well. Even simple things like taking your product roadmap and using Gen AI to actually speed up the product or look at design, look at classifying your roadmaps and putting it out there. Plenty of use cases in terms of your product lifecycle and your software development lifecycle. So, and we are very, very early stages. I think this is just going to explode and evolve even more.
Absolutely, sir. Now, I'm not trying to be the Debbie Downer here, but there are certain challenges that we really need to talk about here in terms of operationalizing Gen AI. Now, Shakti, sir, when we talk about Gen AI, it's adopting a Gen AI model is like shooting a moving target because the progress is happening so fast that it is hard to adapt to it. So, how do you deal with the challenge of consistency of output when the models keep deprecating? How do you deal with that challenge when you are trying to operationalize Gen AI at Yatra?
Yes, Sneha, that's a great question because that is a huge challenge in adoption of Gen AI. Since I use Gen AI models a lot, we have not only used Gen AI for our analytics, but we have built software solutions around it. And so I can give you the experience that I have felt. One is that Gen AI response is not always consistent. I'm not saying, I'm not talking about hallucination that it makes up its own answer. The answer will be right, but some of the fields may be missing. So for example, when we are analyzing the receipts, sometimes the currency of the receipt will not be returned, right? So what do I do with it? Next time when I do it, I analyze the same receipt, I will get the currency. That is an issue. The second thing is, once you get an output from the Gen AI response, the downstream process has to work on that output. So we say, okay, in a prompt, we say that the output should be in form of a JSON object with one single like curly bracket. Sometimes it will send 2 curly brackets. So you have to continuously improve your prompt, right? Because, if the format is not right, then the downstream process will fail. The other thing is that, as you mentioned, like these models keep on deprecating. If a new model comes up, that does not mean it's necessarily a superior model. It's just a different model. How much has it been trained on? How this all works is you have models, you have a whole bunch of constant parameters, they have to be optimized. Did you spend enough time in optimizing that? Did you find the global minima of the error function, all those things? And what that does is that in the same example, the JSON object, what we found was, and I'm taking an example of Google, by the way, I love Google. So we were using Vision Pro, Gemini Vision Pro, and then Google deprecated it and it changed to Vision Pro 1.5, which is the latest model. So it was sending the JSON object, but now it was sending it as a string, right? So it's like another data type. Then you have to go and change the downstream code. So this is, I think, an issue that now we are all realizing, when we work with Gen AI. How do you handle that? You work with multiple such models, You develop a prompt for GPT 3.5, for 4.0, for 4.0, for Gemini and all these, and then be ready, when something fails or like something changes. So our code should be smart enough to switch from one model to another. That is like one way to handle that.
Molly, sir, would you like to add to it?
I think spot on. See, today morning as I was coming in, one article that came on my feed was titled Model Collapse in Gen AI. Okay? It's a Forbes article. I don't know how many of you have seen it. I'm like,
it's been in the news for some time
right?
now.
It's amazing because it touches on a lot of things that we are talking about, and we take this for granted. So, and even if you listen today for the entire day till now, people talk about Gen AI being a great use case for synthetic data creation. I think in your previous panel as well, Sneha, you asked that question. And so, model collapse is a scenario where artificial data starts dominating and human original data disappears. So it becomes a copy of a copy of a copy, and then the AI models obviously are going to become weaker and weaker in terms of truly understanding what humans want. And so, just building on Dr. Shakti's example, these are trends that we all as practitioners have to be very, wary of, pay attention to, and figure out. I think what will happen is that there will be research, there will be new models that help us figure out, is this AI, Gen AI generated data or not generated data, like hallucination versus no hallucination, right? And then we have to start maybe even storing data sets separately, which are human data sets versus artificial created data sets, and then give some weighting and train it. This is, I'm telling you, we're going to go crazy in terms of how we adapt to this world.
Right, absolutely. Now,
One thing, and this is so the problem that you talked about, operational challenges. So it is not just, leveraging these tools, it's also in the field of upskilling. For example, as an upskilling company, we keep on creating program courses, for people to
Right, and it is different
learn
from
and
traditional AI
upskill.
because
To keep
this
them
is
up
more
to date
decentralized.
is also, equally
True.
difficult, because the versions are changing, the new tools are coming in the market. So when the learner enrolls and starts the journey, learner will always want to be on top of the technologies, or
And
using the
different
latest
personas, what are
technologies.
their responsibilities in
So
terms
this
of
is a
Gen AI?
challenge for edtech upskilling companies as well.
Correct, absolutely. So, how are you dealing with that challenge at Great Learning? How are you trying to train different personas of users, because they have to be acquainted with what their responsibilities are in relation to Gen AI, what are the risks that are involved, how they can avoid the potential issues, because this is far more decentralized than traditional AI.
So, like I said, there's a lot of enterprise attention, and if I look at all the profiles that we've put through our training over the last 8 months, there's like a very big base of everybody in the organization needs to know some Gen AI, where some of the issues that was mentioned by the panel is not that critical, where they are not building applications, but they are users of this. Probably the organization itself has built an application. So that's a big base. That's one general purpose user, whether you're a marketer, you're a salesperson, you're from the production team, whoever you are. If you are business things that you need to know this as a technology, they come in. This is a short, easy to teach. There's not much of a risk there. A
And
little
the
narrow.
enrollment rates for these courses are very high.
Very, very high.
Even
Yeah.
to
So
believe.
this is like I'm making like a think of an inverted triangle.
Yes.
Like a biggest base. Next is like a little narrower, where these are people who are technologists within the company. So the ones like Dr. Shakti's team, who's like actually building the tech. And so they will have to think through many of these issues. They will have to think through what is going to be the application, the architecture, the entire DevOps cycle, if I can put it. And then there is this much narrower down is another person, is actually the developers, who actually have to build, write code and deploy these applications on the ground. There we tend to go much more deeper, where things such as, and I'll tell you, for follow-up to one of the developer had asked me this question, which is, this is, we are generating data which is getting used as prompts for my next fine-tuned model. How do I put a watermark, right? And today's models, for instance, the open models, you can put in invisible tokens to the human eye within the data itself. So the model will know. So there is watermarking addressing the model collapse, right? It's a very real problem, because finally annotated human data is very, very much needed, but it's becoming lesser and lesser in terms of the data that is used. So we are now at a space where we need to invisibly watermark the data that's getting into the training, whether it's generated by human or not. So the way we do it is we add an invisible token, which is like fired, randomly injected at somewhere in the text. So when that token is seen by the model, it knows this is not human data, and I could put that as a lower priority when I'm during training. So this is the level at the bottommost tip, right? So there's like broad-based users who just want to know the application, like point use case. I want to write out a post on my company page. That's the broadest use case. Then to people who are building this, solution architects. Then to the developers who are like much smaller in a committee, but then they have to be dealt with in a very, very different way.
Absolutely. That's a very interesting point. Now, Raj, one of the other challenges that organizations face with GenAI is that it requires a lot of training data. And if the training data is biased, then the outcome will also be biased. So how can organizations ensure that there is no bias and there is a fairness in the outcome? Because if it's biased, it could lead to a lot of ethical concerns.
So before I answer this question, let me share a quick analogy. What excites me when I hear the word Gen AI is the immense potential and the unprecedented opportunities it can offer. Think of our lives. I mean, in our day-to-day professional lives, we all have started using Gen AI. I mean, if you want to create a project, if you want to create content, videos, images, or even if you want to write a code, Gen AI can do that in a few seconds. Great technology. Now, sometimes I feel like Gen AI is like a genie. You have a genie by your side, genie does what you wish. While this technology is great, And like any other technology, it has its pros and cons. Now, one of the cons is biasness in the business, in the AI models. Now, think of some of the industries or domains where if you have a Gen AI model which is biased, what could happen to those people? So, for example, recruitment, healthcare, legal. If you have Gen AI model which is biased, it could really affect people's lives. Now, what are the ways? How can we ensure that our models are unbiased and ethical as well? Now, there are a few things which we all can do in order to ensure that our models, once they're built, they are not doing something which they're not supposed to. The first thing is, which is one of the building blocks, that is the training data. When it comes to training data, it's extremely critical that we take the data from different demographics, cover different perspectives, cover multiple use cases, parameters, so that when the Gen AI models are created, they are not leaning towards here and there. Because once you build the model, anything and everything which you're going to be building, you're going to be building it on top of that. So it's important that the data covers all the demographics and different cultures as well. That's one. The second is, when you're building Gen AI models, it's important that your decision-making of the Gen AI model is very transparent. So that in case if you find any biasness in that, then you're able to identify it, you're able to correct it. The third is that human oversight. Now, when a Gen AI model is making any critical decisions, you want to make sure there is some human element who's looking at it and ensuring that if it is going towards any biasness, then that can be detected, it can be corrected as well. Bearing in mind that once you build any models, as I said, that's going to be your building block. Anything and everything which you're going to be building is going to be built on that. Now, the next thing is that when you're building these Gen AI models, it's important to get some feedback as well. So having a continuous feedback loop is critical, where people can share the feedback, the ones who are developing it, the ones who are deploying it, the ones who are using it as well, so that you can know that where the models are failing and then make the changes. The other is on the audits as well, making sure that your Gen AI models are audited at a certain frequency so that you can identify that what's working, what's not working. Other than those, using some of the tools where you could check fairness as well of the model, how it's behaving, whether it's doing the right things or not. Other than that, I think having some sort of governance council as well, which ensures that they are training people who are building Gen AI models so that they know what biasness could be, the people who are deploying it as well. I think these are some of the things which we can do in order to make sure our AI models are not biased and they're able to do what we want them to do.
Right, very critical points there, Raj. Now, I'd like to move on to you, Dr. Pavankumar. When we talk about enterprise-grade Gen AI, the problem of hallucinations cannot be underestimated. So what can organizations do to have an active hallucination avoidance strategy to make sure that the systems are reliable?
So let me, I think, first define hallucination. So this is my own perspective. When does the user feel that the model has hallucinated? One is an explicitly a wrong answer is given, like Dr. Shakti said, right? So you know the answer. For instance, you've built a bot which is helping finance analysts answer questions based on an annual report. If the company's revenue is 81 billion, and if the model gives the wrong answer, then it's obviously, it's gone wrong. So that's still fixable because you can trace it to the source. One way to easily fix it is when the model is giving you the answer, ask it to cite its sources. Research shows that merely putting this in a prompt improves the accuracy, specifically when it's factual information. That's an easy fix. If it's a factual information, I can have a test set, look at correct answers, look at what the model is giving, and then try to go back and see if where it's going wrong. Typical places where it goes wrong is whether the database which is powering all of this, that failed. The vector database didn't retrieve good context, or the model itself is not powerful enough to look at the context and give you the answer. So that is fixable if it's factual. The big problem is when it is not factual. Suppose the same analyst asks, summarize the management discussion analysis section in this annual report in 5 sentences. Now, analyst 1 will think it is good, and analyst 2 will think this is hallucinated, this summary, right? So the first thing that why is the user feeling that it's hallucinated, right? That boils down to firstly our, 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 our conception that AI models are deterministic in some sense is completely not true when it comes to Gen AI. That's where the logic goes for a toss. Because ultimately what these models are doing is doing probabilistic predictions, which means each model has a fixed vocabulary. Like OpenAI's models have a vocabulary of 150,000 words, and they're making probability distribution prediction there, right? So if you have just 2 words, for instance, positive, negative, and if a model assigns a probability of 0.6 to positive, 0.4 to negative, if you ask it once, it's going to respond positive. But if you ask it 100 times, it's going to say negative 40 times because it's probabilistic, right? Human understanding of probability is not sufficient there. So when a user is asking the same question again and again, they're getting different answers, which is, model is not incorrect here, it's not hallucinating. It's your understanding of probability which is not correct, right? And this doesn't happen for factual information because a human can check the answer is 81.3 billion is the same as 81.3 billion, right? So factually, hallucination is fixable through prompting. But when it comes to subjective output, right, then the nuance here is, did it actually hallucinate or did it do a probabilistic sampling, right? So at this point, we have not solved this completely. When it is a subjective answer, the only way we are solving it now is actually to make a panel of humans write a subjective answer, summarize management discussion, a human writes it, and we compare the model answer to it and see how close is it to a human or not, right? Which is a very costly solution. Yeah. We haven't fully solved it, but at least 60% of the problem is solved in terms of factually, it is solvable, hallucinations. But I think there's more discussion needs to happen on what is hallucination, right? Asking the same question and receiving multiple answers is not hallucination.
Right.
Giving incorrect answers is hallucination.
Right. So clarity on that, and then
correct. You need to decide first what are you measuring.
Yes, right? Yeah. Absolutely. Now, Molly sir, I'd like to understand from you, what can the industry, academia and government do to collaborate in terms of being able to promote able to spur more innovation in the field of Gen AI? Yeah. How can they collaborate?
Yeah, I think, discussions like this are very valuable because we're all learning, right? We're all on stage. We are all supposedly experts, but we're all learning from each other. I think these kind of conversations are super valuable. Within the company, what we've done is we've actually set up a strategic Gen AI unit that focuses on governance, that focuses on coordination, focuses on solutioning. Like, are we leveraging the right LLM? Like, bringing that expertise into it. Focuses on R&D. So a lot of thought leadership comes from one central unit, and we feel like that's a good way for enterprises to have some control over what's happening within the company. Now, this central unit is then tasked with also partnering with research institutions, with academia to stay on top of what's happening. So we have like a regular monthly cadence where there's of course training done, but also research papers are looked at. Like for example, today morning we to address hallucination, there's a new research paper called semantic entropy. And people have implemented that within the company to say, how does it help deal with these kind of inaccuracies? And so read a lot, have a research team that looks at it, partner with the ecosystem, super important. That's what we do. And that's what we've done for AI, by the way. This is not special for Gen AI. That's what we did for AI as well, because AI was also a space that was evolving ever. Now, Gen AI is even more complex because there's a highly trained model that's outside that it's a black box for you. You're not building it, it's a black box. Plus, infrastructure, heavy investment in infrastructure. You're talking about huge vector databases. You're talking about, again, customer facing, a lot of risk, and so super important to stay on top of all of these things.
Absolutely. Gaurav, how can the edtech sector benefit from Gen AI, and how can it transfer that benefit back into the enterprise? How do you think it can make it a win-win situation?
See, for a edtech sector, and especially the upskilling companies, it is very critical, to provide the right kind of opportunities for the learners, or right platform for the learners to learn these skills. So definitely there are, videos, or there are a lot of learning available on YouTube, but not everyone can learn through that. So what these upskilling companies, do, and what they should do is they curate a very skill-based or outcome-oriented programs, for the right set of audience. So as my colleague said, that there are these three audiences. So one is the user, so who wants to become more productive by leveraging generative AI in their day-to-day activities. So for them, there is a separate kind of programs that are there available in the market. Similarly, there is a audience which is a more power users, which are leveraging them on their technical work, so like coding, testing, and all. And then third is the the core developer of the LLMs. So for each kind of profile, how can these upskilling companies like all the top companies in the world, how can they provide the right curated content for learning? So
Absolutely. Now, we don't have much time left, but we'll have a quick wrap-up round. We'll start with you, Raj. 50 seconds by the clock. So if you can tell us, what is the one trend that you're watching out for, that you're excited for in this space? And what is your one concern or pet peeve with Gen AI that maybe gives you sleepless nights?
So the trend, I'll talk from our industry, and the use case which we're trying to solve is using voice AI. We're trying to see if we can use voice AI to ensure that AI can talk to the individuals, understand their needs, and then pass over the call over to a sales agent, which ensures that you don't need a large workforce. That is one. Second, it makes it more effective, because the chances of closing that sale is higher as compared to making too many phone calls. Because at our organization, at upGrad, we make about 4 million calls a month, and that's a large number. And that's why we're looking at looking at voice AI. One thing which is concerning, and I'm sure that everyone would agree, is the security and compliance while using AI. How do we ensure that the data which we are sharing with any AI models, how are they protecting it? How are they ensuring that it's not going to be shared with somebody else? That's it.
see, apart from compliance or security, another thing that I personally feel, which gives me sleepless nights is, job loss. So there's a lot of discussion that has happened on, whether Gen AI will take jobs away or it will add more jobs. Uh, I cannot say certainly what will happen, but I was reading somewhere, but it is very critical that people with Gen AI skills will definitely take jobs from people who don't leverage Gen AI, without Gen AI skills. So that is what.
Yeah, I would say two things. I think one is that see, when GDPR came in, right, when privacy kickstarted, there was a huge movement towards privacy by design. It should become part of every employee's thought process in terms of privacy, right? So that was the privacy by design concept. And I think we are at a place where, with widespread use of data, we need to make sure that this ethical use of data becomes, mindset in every employee as such when they're building Gen AI, models, right? So that's on the pet peeve side or sleepless night side. On the other side, I think see, cost continues to be a factor. On the AI model side, we moved away. There's a lot of push towards small models, small data, small models. I hope to see that happen on the LLM side as well, right? Like, maybe I don't need 150,000 words or so on. Maybe 50,000 words for that domain. Like we spoke about data silos and data mesh in the morning and all this stuff, right? So maybe specific concentrated use cases could be very nice as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I think, that's one more trends for me this year. One is definitely SLMs. It's very, very early. Like, small models are doing as well as the bigger ones, but it's so early. They're not stable at all. They don't even follow JSON output, like, even as the bigger models. They're hopeless at following instructions. So yeah, that's one. The more exciting thing for me, and as I'm putting on my academic hat, is now we finally have models which are able to parse multi-model inputs together. Like, when you're seeing me speak, you're hearing my voice, see me as well, and then the entire setting, taking in the background noise. Today's models don't do that. We have to convert everything to text, and then that goes into an LLM. Finally, with GPT-4o and that series, we have these models which can natively process everything at once, which means this is, for the first time, human level input ingestion, right? So that will open up a lot, which is what I'm extremely excited about. Frankly, I'm just so excited that I have very little risk, because I don't think, frankly, we are at a place where this is a world-beating technology. We have just started out. It's very good that organizations are having conversations. This conversations around risk, like you said, this is a very good discussion to have, which means people really want to put money behind this technology. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this discussion at all. it is definitely rough around the edges, but we will figure our way out, right? So I'm at this point, I think I'm much more excited about what this will bring to the table rather than bring myself down with all the risks that are associated, which anyway they've identified for me.
Right, right. Shakti sir, very quickly.
So one thing that I'm looking out for would be something called super AI. What that means is that models that will do one thing and only one thing, but they'll do it very well. So models for healthcare, model for solving legal cases, model for the travel industry. They will do nothing else but one single thing, and they will go way over and above human intelligence. That way, right now the models we have, they're like multimodal models, and they're kind of like generalists, right? We want experts.
Right, absolutely. I think there's a tremendous amount of optimism in the panel and also in the audience when it comes to the mainstream adoption of Gen AI. I think organizations that are willing to adopt it need to establish a very solid vision, guardrails, and a roadmap for this, and also look for new plans for cost justification, because cost, skill set, and the internal challenges are some of the key concerns. But I'm sure with all the expertise that we have here and the amount of work that's going on in this industry, some of these challenges will get obviated real soon. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks to the gentlemen for bringing in such interesting and eclectic insights on this panel. Thank you once again. Can we have a resounding round of applause for all of them? Thank you.